My name is Rich Alveld, and you're listening to the Welcome to My World podcast. When the topic of mental health and wellness is discussed, it can be assumed that we are referring to mental illness. But that is not always the case. Mental health and wellness can vary significantly from one person to another. It can come from an acquired brain injury down to extended periods of sadness and everything in between. My guest and I will share our stories, thoughts, and feelings about how mind and body wellness has become such an important part of our lives. Our stories will be insightful, mostly personal, and occasionally a little humor thrown in. We hope what people hear and take away from these stories will help them overcome some of the challenges they face and or create a better understanding of the world around us. Because what appears fine on the outside may not be what is happening on the inside. So as the song goes, welcome to my world. Won't you come on in? Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our next episode of the Welcome to My World podcast. My guest today is Gina Best. Gina, thank you very much for joining us. And you are the second person that I've had on this podcast that's on video. So it's a little bit of an exciting time for this. Truly appreciate it and truly appreciate you agreeing to come onto the podcast.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I kind of forgot about the video part. So this is me working from home after a long weekend.
Mm-hmm. Well, and we all have our various stages of dress and work throughout the day, and that's the glorious thing about being able to work from home and do these kind of things. So I don't think anybody's going to hold that against you. In fact, as I mentioned, it just makes the podcast just that much more natural. So Gina, you've had some experience with mental health in your life. To the most that you want to share with, would you be willing to share your story to us? Up to this point?
Absolutely. And to share, oh God, it goes way back. So I don't even know where to start. So I'm known for being outspoken and bold and take no prisoners. I speak my mind with love. But for a lot of years, that was my armor. That was my armor. I would bold you, I'd wow you with my boldness, and then no one would ask personal questions because I wasn't okay.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really a case of you don't know what you don't know. And for a long time, I thought I was okay. And I was lucky enough about, I want to say 7 years ago now. 7 years ago, I decided to do a leadership program. It was a speaking and a leadership program. It was called the Authentic Speakers Academy for Leadership. And when I truthfully, I applied for it to get a friend off my back, and I had no idea what I was doing. But I had started a second business, and I thought, oh, I really need the speaking skills because I used to talk so fast, people couldn't understand me. And it was almost a test. If you really wanted to hear what I was saying, you had to keep up. So I needed the speaking skills because I really wanted to get out there and start talking. And I knew I needed the leadership skills. The authentic part, that didn't factor in for me. I didn't. So anyway, I remember when I did my interview, his name was Dov Barron, and he said two things to me. He said, I'm worried about your complacency and your ego. And I thought, complacency? I'm not complacent. I just started a second business. Mm-hmm. Ego? I'm not conceited. What does that mean? I had no idea what he was talking about. So I got accepted and off I went. Little did I know it would completely change my world. And it did. It was the most amazing, heart-wrenching, hardest thing I've ever done in my life. We did 20 years of personal development in 8 months. And it took me apart and put me back together. Coinciding with this, it's funny how everything happens for a reason. Thank gosh it came along when it did. So I just gotta back up. So when I first got married, what I wanted more than anything in the world was a family. And that didn't come naturally for my husband and I at the time. So we did fertility treatments. And I got really, really lucky, and I got pregnant with twins. And we're talking now, 1997? No, years ago. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I got pregnant with twins. I lost the first one at 9 weeks and the second at 18. And again, you don't know what you don't know. So how I got through that is I went home, and for a month, I stayed up all night and slept all day and didn't talk to anybody. My Shih Tzu Winston and I would do cruises at night in our old Ford, one of these great big old Ford cars we called Rosie, and we'd cruise around all night. And then one day the phone rang and they said, "Are you coming back to work?" And I said, "Yes." And I went, and it was done. And I just moved forward. Now, fast forward years along the way, I was working in the financial industry. The company I worked for, I was really, really bored. I was a licensed stock and bond trader for financial planners. And one of the owners said, "Hey, want to be the mortgage broker for the firm?" And I thought, sure. I was really bored. So I got my mortgage broker license. I started a new company. I had a phone and a desk, and off I went. I had a boss who was super supportive and said to me, "You're going to quit your job." And I was like, "No, I'm not." I quit my job within 18 months and didn't look back. Spent many, many, many years building, and it was my baby that I could grow, so that's what I did. I networked. I don't know. I built it by networking 4 days a week, 4 or 5 events a week, and off we went. Then life changed along the way. We decided to adopt, and we have 2 amazing boys. One is 17 tomorrow, which I can't quite believe. He was 4 when he came to us, and the other one is 14. And holy shit, he's giving me a run for my money. And then I lived in a world of, I was busy all the time. I remember someone said to me, "You do more in a day than I do in a week." And I thought that was a really good thing. Now, looking back, again, you don't know what you don't know. Busy was my religion, and that's how I coped.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting at my desk at the end of the day, and the sun would, cross my desk, and I would think, holy shit, is this it? And I'd look up, and I used to have this wall of awards, and it was, 8 feet tall and 6 feet wide. And I had every mortgage industry award I ever earned on that wall. And that's where I felt, when I looked at that wall, I felt like I was somebody. But other than that, and then when I would try to talk about it, which wasn't very often, people would look at me like I'm crazy because, outside looking in, I had it all. I had, a successful business, a really nice husband, 2 kids, great friends. And, how could I not be okay? So I just kept busy because that kept everything at bay.
Right.
So when I did this program, it was the Saturday night. It started Thursday. And again, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I'd never done a single piece of personal development. And it was a Saturday night. And he said to us, "Go to the bathroom." So we all went to the bathroom because we knew something was up. And then we sat down, and he said, "Tell us about your biggest shame." And I thought, I'll never forget. I was sitting in this chair thinking, shame? I don't do shame. I do everything to avoid those kind of feelings.
Yeah.
I don't do shame. And I had that little tiny voice in my head that said the babies. And I got up, and I was first because leaders go first. And I talked for 40 minutes about something I hadn't talked about in about 18 years. And then once you open that door, I used to call it the Great Wall of Gina. So I had, so that day the Great Wall of Gina got a big crack and came crumbling down. Because every time I didn't want to deal with anything, I'd just put another brick on the wall and I would just put it away. But once you talk about it, it's like letting that secret out. Once you start talking about it, you have to face it. And it was really interesting because the big joke was I didn't know how to spell vulnerability. And it's true because I come from a background that we were told never discuss family business outside the kitchen table. Well, somehow I turned that into don't ever talk about your emotions.
Oh, okay.
So for the first 2.5 years, every time I talked about my emotions, I whispered. Because they were secrets.
Right.
So once the door was open, sorry, you go ahead.
I was going to say, so whoever you were talking to, it was very low whisper because you were still trying to protect all of that.
Yep. They were secrets. My feelings were secrets. So once I knocked the wall down, I opened the door and I had to deal with the grief and the loss. And that is something I never dealt with. And there was a lot of it since it's a very common theme in my life, which I hate to admit. And I've kind of become an expert on it because the grief and loss was such a huge part of me, but I would never face it. So I started down that path and started facing it. And then we started the course in just after Christmas was our first boot camp. So it was a series. It was a series of 3 boot camps, and it was 8 months, and we had to do recordings every week and all sorts of stuff. So we had a boot camp in January, and our second boot camp was in May. And we started the boot camp in May on a Thursday. No, on a Wednesday. And Wednesday night, I got a call. No, it was Thursday. Wednesday. Anyway, doesn't matter. I got a call that evening saying my brother had an episode. And I live in, the West Coast. I live in the US, and my brother was in Nova Scotia, Halifax. And he had they called it a heart episode. And basically he went down to the car wash and never got up. So that was Wednesday. I made it through Thursday. Friday morning, they told me I need to go home. I need to go to Nova Scotia.
Mm-hmm.
So I booked my flight and went to my boot camp because it was really close to the airport. And by the time 10 o'clock came, my brother had passed away. So I got on a plane and went to Nova Scotia. And looking back at it now, if I hadn't started the process, I would have arrived in Halifax, and excuse my language, the biggest bitch you ever met. Because how I dealt with my grief and my loss was anger.
Oh, okay.
So that was and that's how I still to this day, when I'm hurt when I'm really hurt, first thing I do is get angry, but I know now what happens.
Is that part of that wall, that anger?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah. First response. And when I got to Nova Scotia, when I got to Toronto to change planes, I was so pissed off. Because why am I doing this? He's passed away. What are we going to do? Sit around for a couple days? Like, it was ridiculous, the whole conversation I had in my head. And then when I got to Nova Scotia, it had passed, and I was really glad I went. But it gave me coping skills. The moral of the story is it gave me coping skills. And if I hadn't started that process, I wouldn't have been able to function when my brother passed away. So that was 7 years ago. And then fast forward, it's amazing how things happen at certain times you need it. So I needed it then, and then my brother passed away. The following year, my times are all going to get mixed up, but one of my during the program, I made a friend. Her name was Annie, and she was probably the closest person I'd ever let in my life. And we were thick as thieves, and it was amazing. And about 2 years later, she got diagnosed with a stage 4 ovarian cancer. So we went through a couple years. We did chemo and did a radical operation in Calgary. And then we lost her about 3 years later. And in the midst of all this, my ex-husband and I decided to call it quits on our marriage. Right? We were really good friends and really good roommates. So we did that. As all of this coping skills. And then 5 years ago, it's probably about 5.5 years ago now, I did a routine mammogram and got diagnosed with breast cancer.
Wow. That's a lot going on.
Oh yeah. And there's more in between, but these are the big ones. So I did 5 surgeries over 3 years, and I'm cancer free, which is amazing.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. So the breast cancer journey, I call it, was interesting. So during after the first, I got diagnosed in June-ish, and then I had a partial mastectomy in November. So the cancer was gone after that. The last 2 were reconstruction. But once you're all done and you're told you're cancer free, I mean, the whole cancer journey itself is crazy, and it sucks the hope out of you. And literally I got through it one day, a day at a time, one foot in front of the other. Mm-hmm. You never knew when I was going to cry. It was really interesting. Costco was a humongous trigger point for me. Every time I went to Costco, I cried. It was great because people got out of my way. How I coped with that, because my mental health was all over the place. Um, I used exercise. I found exercise when I was doing my personal development program because we had to have a consequence when we didn't follow through on what we were said we would do. And I picked exercise because it was always the bane of my existence. Little did I
Mm.
know it was going to turn into my survival instinct. So I started CrossFit back then. So going through breast cancer, even when I had the surgeries, I went to the gym.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times I couldn't do anything. I'd sit on a ball and watch. But what kept me going at the time is I had a goal. And my goal was a 400-pound deadlift. And I can't tell you why, where any of that, why it came from, but that was my goal. And literally, I was at the gym 3 days a week, and that was my pure focus, was a 400-pound deadlift. When I got diagnosed, the day I got diagnosed with breast cancer, I think I was at 265. And then, I remember the week after my mastectomy was the end of November. By mid-December, I was literally sitting on the ball in the middle of the gym because I
Mm-hmm.
had to be there because it's what kept me
Mm-hmm.
going.
Right.
Sometimes I had kids and dogs in tow because nothing was going to stop me, because that's what lifting weights ground me, but having that big goal is something that it was a tangible I could have.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, the rest of my life with, where's business going? What do I want in 5 years? What do I want in 10 years? I couldn't do anything with that, because when you hear the words cancer, it sucks your hope away. And that's one of the biggest challenges.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it was that 400-pound deadlift. It kept me going for a long, long time. So I did it, and it was amazing. And I still went to the gym 3 days a week, and my ex and I had a pretty good divorce, as far as, no, we're great co-parents. The yicky stuff we never talked about and just dealt with it. Exercise became my coping mechanism, right? So when
Right.
things got really tough for me, I'd go to the gym. When I was going through all the surgery, some days, again, when you're dealing with cancer, the unknown is the big part. So some days I would go to the office and I'd get through the day, and my clients knew what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
And some days were good and some days were bad, and some days I couldn't do it and some days I could. Right? I did what I had to do because I had to pay the bills. That wasn't a choice. But then the days I would stop at the gym on my way home, and it was a personal training gym, and all the trainers knew me. And there was one trainer, his name was Luke, and he's the one I usually ended up because of timing. So he'd see me come in, and I'd usually be dressed for work and have my sneakers.
Yeah.
And he would move his clients to the opposite side of the gym. And then the music would all of a sudden switch to really, really loud heavy metal, death metal, like as hard as could get. And he'd put the heaviest ball on the floor for me. And I would literally throw that ball at the floor until I cried. And then I would change my shoes, and he'd flip the music back and put his clients back in the middle, and I would leave. And I did that, I don't know, 3-4 days a week.
Wow.
That's how I handled, because I was angry too. And I was,
Yeah.
I was sad, I was scared, I was angry. And it also rocked my world, as in, who I was. And for myself, because I had to have a partial mastectomy, when I first started the first 3 surgeries, she told me, my surgeons told me I wouldn't qualify for reconstruction. And when I asked why, she told me my body mass index was too high, because I am not a small girl, but I am super fit. So when the time came after the second surgery, when I had to have the third surgery, she said to me, we're going to have to do a mastectomy. And I said, well, how can you ask me to give up part of myself when I can't do reconstruction? And she said, why don't you meet the plastic surgeon and see what she says?
Mm-hmm.
Well, she was absolutely spectacular.
Mm.
I had a whole speech range. I am not your average couch potato. I'm pretty sure it was the deadlift weight that did it for her. Anyway, she, the people that you meet along the way are amazing. And she's a plastic surgeon, and most everything she does is for fee, except for breast reconstruction for cancer patients.
Oh, really?
Right. So I got super lucky. She's one of the best plastic surgeons in town. And she was amazing. And it was all those little things along the way that kept me going. So when it was all said and done, and had my new boob and everything, I remember looking in the mirror and like when you look after the fourth surgery, so third surgery, they did a mastectomy and I had a fillable implant put in. And I would go every second week and they put saline into this fillable implant. So they did that for a few months and then it was swapped out. I always had surgeries Labor Day weekend. So 3 Labor Day weekends in a row, I had surgeries. So it was
Hmm.
Labor Day weekend and I had my ex take the kids out of the house. And like I knew what it was going to look like because it was going to look like exactly like it did before we started this surgery because it was a fillable implant. But I had this idea in my head. Apparently, in the back of my head, I was going to have like boobs from a girly magazine. Oh my God. I'll never forget it. I cried for days because it messed with who I was. Not only did it not look like me, but my boobs made me a woman and I couldn't have a baby. So then that whole thing started again. And I was really depressed for a while and I was really good at faking it, fake it till you make it.
Hmm.
I'd get up in the morning and do what I had to do. And it was Dr. Van Lincoln. I went to her office and, I've seen her a gazillion times because this has been going on now for, 2 years. And I had my checkup and she was really happy with everything, how it was healing and everything. And she said something to me and I burst into tears. And she looked at me and she said, "This is the first time you cried in all of this. What is going on?" And I said, "I hate it.
Mm.
I absolutely hate it." And then she said, "We'll have to do something about it." So I got a bigger boob. That's truly what happened. And then what also sped it up is the version I took. Of course, there's always things. I had a implant put underneath my pec and it would stretch things out. And it was the thing that it was the choice that kept me out of the gym for the least amount of time. Well, then it slipped and I started moving and oh God, it was terrible. So anyway,
Mm.
once I finally got the final boob, um, things were better. But that's when it got even harder because you're cancer free, you're done. Hey, great, go live your life. And I was
Yeah.
one of the lucky ones because my cancer was caught so early. I only had ever had one appointment with the Cancer Association, the cancer people. I can't remember what they're called. And it was like a week before my mastectomy, and they were convinced that once I had my mastectomy, everything was going to be fine, and it was. No one offered me a support group. I didn't know that stuff, and you're in this place that you can't think. You can't think through those things. And now I know, yes, find a support group, talk to someone who's been through it, but I didn't know anybody who'd been through it, so I didn't talk
Hmm.
to anybody.
Right.
So then once I was done, and I refer to this as the fog descended. And the year after it was all done was my worst year. I made really bad decisions. It's like my brain left my body half the time. And it was absolutely terrible. And every now and then the fog would lift and I would see, what was in front of me and then the fog would come back down. It was the craziest thing. And it was a full year of it was terrible, terrible. And I did what I had to do because you pay your bills. But I look back at now and think, geez, man, I made some really bad decisions. And I always say now when people talk to me, lots of people, I'm always the first one to say, have them call me. Absolutely. And my first piece of advice is don't do anything for the year after.
Yeah.
Like going through it is
Yeah.
hard enough, but that year after, holy shit.
Now, was it a accumulation of all the things? Like there,
Yeah.
it seems to be all kind of coming together now.
Oh,
Is that? Yeah.
it was all coming together. And the grief and the loss was so huge. And it's really interesting because you learn a lot of things. You learn lessons as we go, and we don't know what we don't know. Um, I learned that so when I'm in that place, like I don't have a lot of recall of some of that year after, even some of the cancer times. And it's what trauma does to your body,
Hmm.
you know? And when you're in a trauma and you're functioning, you function, you do what you got to do. Like I have, deep down, I know I got to pay the bills, I've got the kids, that kind of thing. But like people say, oh, blah, blah, we did this, blah, blah. I have no recollection. It's really interesting. So came out of all that, finally got everything back on track. Things were going really well. And I have two businesses. I have the mortgage business and I have a mentor and consulting business. Things were going super, super, super good. And then what happens? COVID.
Yeah.
And I remember the Monday the Monday before the lockdown came on Tuesday. Sunday night, 3 of my coaching clients bailed because everybody was freaking out. And the Monday I was driving home thinking, oh my God, how is this going to go? Because at the
Mm-hmm.
time, we had no idea what the world was going to do. I was living in our marital home with my boys, and I thought, oh my God, how am I going to pay the bills? Of course, right? First thing,
Right.
because breast cancer, I'll tell you one thing breast cancer did do to me, it put me in the hole big time, right? Because I was responsible for our lifestyle. Again, what I wish I knew now, what I wish I knew then, what I knew now, because I was so scared. So when Dan and I, my ex is Dan, he's a lovely man. When we called it quits, Dan moved into our basement suite. So it was
Mm-hmm.
perfect for the boys. And we did that for almost 3 years, and it got me through breast cancer and all that stuff. But I still felt responsible for our lifestyle. So even though I was going through breast cancer and not working, we still had the same lifestyle. So, and then the year after, I was in the hole. I had just climbed out of the debt hole. I was putting money away, and COVID hit. And again, had no idea what to do. Of course, freaked out. And then, homeschool. I was not cut out to be a homeschool teacher. Just so we know.
You're not alone on that one. There's a lot of
Yeah.
people out there.
Yeah. So my ex and I, we do week on, week off. During the homeschool set time, the boys were with me during the week and with Dan on weekends because Dan's not a great multitasker. And how I got through that is every morning I got up and I worked out. Like I learned by this point, my mental health is directly related to my body. And there's a phrase, I don't know what your psychology follows your physiology, right?
So this healthy body, healthy mind kind of thing.
Yeah, and not just that. So we were a big proponent of dance parties in the office, or when you're having a really bad day, we have a dance party because the moment you move your body, something shifts, right? So during a lot of COVID, the beginning of COVID with the big lockdown, I get up in the morning and I was scared and I was, overwhelmed because the boys were with me all the time. So the first thing I knew if I shifted my body, my mind would follow. So that's what I did. I did a boot camp online 5 days a week. Loved it.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So we got through COVID, got through the first, the beginning of COVID. And then my ex decided to spring selling our house on me. And I was like, really? And he had a really, 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 really nasty lawyer. Bad.
Yeah.
And the first time this came up, I had a nasty lawyer. And then I decided this is not the way I wanted to do this. Talk to my boys because my boys are both adopted. The idea of home is really important and it's an anchoring point for them. Mm-hmm. So I talked to them about what did they want to do, and they both wanted to stay in our house. And I thought, okay. And then we knew how COVID was going. It was busy in the mortgage world, and I still wasn't sure how I was going to pull it off. And my girlfriend, I'll never forget it, my girlfriend said to me, write a check for the amount of money you needed. And I was like, why? She said, just write the check. So I wrote the check. She said, put it in your drawer. And I said, okay. And she said, look at it every day. I was like, really? She's like, just trust the universe. I'm like, okay. Anyway, bottom out that August, trusted the universe. Yeah. I'm not sure how I pulled it off, but I did. So that was a big pressure off. And then getting through COVID, I literally worked out every single day. Weekends, I would, go for a walk, ride my bike when the weather was good. It was going really well. First year COVID came by, when we got divorced, we had a Toyota Highlander and an old travel trailer, and the boys loved going camping. And I had stopped going because the camper was too small for my ex and I, even though we're good friends. So I decided I was going to, my boys at 14 and 16 still wanted to hang with me. We love camping. So I decided I'm going to buy a little travel trailer. So I did. I traded my Beetle that I loved in. I bought an SUV that I still feel like is a tank because I drove a smart car for 7 years and then went to a Beetle. So my Atlas feels huge. And I bought a travel trailer. And it was awesome. So I did my first solo trip in March and I was terrified, but I'm not letting fear stop me anymore. And taking the dogs and going camping is so good for me. I was a walker. Like the ocean is my happy place. So there's lots of times during COVID, me and the dogs would get in the car and go to the nearest beach. And that's how I cope. That was my coping mechanism. So then things were going really well. We went camping a couple times. And then May 17th, we went camping the weekend of May 17th, and I had an accident. And it was midday on the Saturday. I was not drinking because I'm not a drinker. I went in to get Tyson up or to get him something and came out and missed the step. And I went down.
Oh.
And I had the most excruciating pain for 2 minutes and then weirdness. Well, once I finally got up, and there's a whole story to that because we're camping, no hookups. It was crazy stuff. I realized then and there my kids are two complete opposites. My youngest goes into fix mode, and my oldest shuts down and goes into coping mode. So I was really lucky that my ex was up across Harrison Lake. So I called him, told him I had an accident. He was at least an hour and a half away. I called my other good friend who's my nurse practitioner friend who always tells me what to do. And I ended up calling an ambulance and having to go to the hospital. I waited it was almost an hour drive to the hospital. I was lucky the ex went and picked up the kids and the dogs and took them. Anyway, I ripped my quadricep off my knee.
Ouch.
And for those who don't know, that makes your leg work. So I left the hospital that day with a brace from my ankle to my hip and crutches. I went to my neighborhood hospital the next day, and I had to have emergency surgery the following Thursday. I got super lucky. My sister, my amazing sister, who's in Newfoundland, even though COVID was going on, I called and she was allowed to come and help me. She had her first shot. So she dropped everything. Thank God she's retired, and came out and stayed with me for 6 weeks.
Wow.
So that was in May. I was on the couch for almost 3 months. And for someone who used exercise to cope, it was hellish.
Yeah, I
Because
can
I
imagine.
literally was on the couch in my family room for 3 months. The first month I couldn't. Yeah, first month I could barely. I think it took me 3 weeks to be able to get off the couch and go to the bathroom by myself. So it was okay when my sister was here because constant company, and with my kids and stuff. Once my sister was gone, I literally cried every single morning. And my sister left. I could get in and out of bed by myself because I was sleeping in my oldest son's bed because my bedroom is upstairs. And someone had to take me to physio. I could do couch, kitchen, couch. That's about what I could do. Bathroom. Couldn't give myself a shower by myself. And literally cried every single morning.
And what was causing the emotion, the crying?
Well, it's funny. I have a cousin-in-law who told me when she broke her leg, it was harder than breast cancer. And I understand that. Because when you're immobile and when your coping mechanism is moving your body, I didn't have any other coping mechanisms. And I tried the meditation. I tried all those things. They worked and they didn't. And then I got angry because I was stuck on the couch. And I remember it was a Sunday and I was going to sleep in my own bed.
You're determined.
Yeah. I was determined. And I remember sitting at the bottom of the stairs thinking I can do this. And I did it. And then there were some fun times too. Like in August came, let me think, end of June. So I didn't drive till third week in like July or something, middle of July. So this happened in May and it was a Sunday and I was determined I was going to drive that damn car. And I got my kid out of bed and we got in the car and we drove to the grocery store. And I was so excited. I cried. No, I didn't do it again for another week because it took an awful lot to drive that car. But then we had fun times. Like August came and I'm a bath girl. So my happy place is the bathtub. So that's the other place that COVID made me happy. Well, I was going to get in that bathtub if it killed me. So it was early August. My nephew was here, thank goodness. So I was upstairs and I thought, I'm going to try this. So I got in, couldn't get out.
Oh,
Couldn't get out at all. So Jonathan, my nephew Jonathan Tyson, literally, like, it took us 20 minutes to get me out of the bathtub, and we laughed so hard we almost peed in our pants. So there were
yeah.
fun times,
Mm-hmm.
And in the midst of that, in July, we lost a really good friend and business partner. Our really good friend Sean Oma had her died on a sofa.
Mm.
I want to say it was a Wednesday, with Tuesday midday.
Yeah.
And they say it was heart issues, and that really knocked us for a loop because we'd been business partners for 10 years. There was 4 of us. So my first real drive, I got in the car and drove to Penticton because we had to go. So in
Mm-hmm.
the midst of everything, there was that thrown in. So again, grief and loss is a big common theme. And for me, how I'd usually deal with is I'd move my body, but here I am in a brace from my ankle to my hip.
Right.
Um, when you can't do your normal coping things, you try to figure out other things. So we did a change of scenery in August. I took my boys to Newfoundland, which is where I'm from. We went and stayed with my parents. And there we had a great time, great change of scenery. I was at the point there I could take my brace off a bit, so that things were really good. And I remember sitting on my parents' back deck, and they have a place that overlooks the ocean. And for those of you who have never been to Newfoundland, St. John's, where they live, south side of St. John's, it's always windy. So I love
Mm-hmm.
it. Like, I sat on the deck, like, this is like, rain and fog are my happy, because that's what I grew up with. So I'm
Yeah.
sitting on their back deck. It's blowing a gale. It's sunny, but and I was on Facebook and I was reading things, and I read this post from a friend and thought, are you effing kidding me? Like, it was the straw that broke the camel's back. And I thought, how can intelligent people be spewing these things? And what is all of this? And that's the day I walked away from social media. And I literally walked away for months. And that made a huge difference in my mental health.
Oh, yeah.
Huge difference. Oh, huge. Because you get sucked in. People, especially, so many people get lost in Facebook anyway, and some of it is great, but some of it is not. And we were all in this universal coping mode, not just me. Mine was very specific, but everybody was going through grief and loss and anxiety and stress from COVID. And then the worst was coming out in people, and I thought, why am I doing this to myself?
Mm-hmm.
And even now, here we are months later, I maybe go in once a week. That's not true. I probably go in twice a week, and I do a quick scroll because that's where I see birthdays, and I hate to say it, that's where I just need to see if there's any news with people I actually care about. But I don't, it's not very often because it really, really messes with me.
What do you find to be offensive about it, or what, like you say, messes with you?
Well, I get, the whole COVID, real, not real, vaccine, not vaccine. I go to let's agree to disagree. And
Mm-hmm.
if you don't want to get vaccinated, you know what? That is your decision. I respect your decision. You respect mine. I did get vaccinated because I wanted to see my parents,
Right.
plain and simple. Um, the people who believe COVID is a myth and government, blah, 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 like, I can't even go there. Like, honestly, can't even go there. If that's your belief, it's your belief. It's not mine. Moving on. But that's where I am now with that. But back in the fall, it would just set me off, and I'd be angry, and I would rant, and then I'd stop and think, what the hell does this have to do with anything? And I couldn't make the separation. Right. And then when I saw posts with completely different views from mine, and not that I'm saying I'm right, but completely different views than mine, and the way they were talking about people, that's when I had the real issue. Right?
Yeah.
Because we're all in this together, you believe it or not. And you can't, I actually had a few people say to my face, it's a myth and stuff. And then we've lost people due to COVID. So you're telling me they died and it's in our heads, right? It's shit like that I just couldn't go there. So I just had to remove myself from it.
I had a friend of mine that they decided that they wanted to be happier in her life. And so she basically step back from social media and step back from the people that she felt were adding negativity to her life. So thank you very much for being a friend, but we're not going to be friends for a while until things kind of change. And she said that was very instrumental in her mental health, because all that negativity was just coming to her all the time.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just one specific person or one specific venue or like Facebook or whatever. It just seemed to be all of it. So she says the simplest way I could do it is say, okay, you guys, everybody back off. I don't want to deal with this right now. Maybe when our paths will cross at some other point in time in our lives, but not right now. And just went strictly for positive.
Yeah. So people either add or take away. So if they add positive energy and lightness and hope, or they suck it out with straw. So if it doesn't add to me, I'm not doing it. And, years ago, I went through a major shuffle of friends and who's close to me and stuff like that. Divorce helps. And there's people that we were friends with together, and Dan kind of got them in the divorce, and I'm okay with that. I've got a couple really good friends, but I think the biggest thing right now is we've all just went through 2 years of, a lot of isolation, and it's getting back out there. Now, it's whatever you're comfortable with. But I find that I stop and think about it, and socially, I'm trying to figure it out because I'm out of practice. I went to a dinner last week, realized I'm out of practice. But it's also I was thinking about this morning. I was thinking about a couple of friends this morning. So Friday afternoons, I try to call somebody I haven't talked to lately. Right? And not business, personal, just somebody. I reach out to somebody, because I've heard a lot of people especially from my coaching clients, about, well, they don't call me anymore. Well, you're not calling them. But the other thing too is, right now with the world, this is one of the biggest lessons I learned through all of this, is that it's not about me. So when I don't hear from somebody, it's not because of me. It's not because they're mad at me or annoyed with me or any of that. It's that they're coping the best they can in their lives. Right? Like, that's truly what's going on. And I probably don't even enter their mind, except occasionally, but it's not personal. And like, that lesson, that just made me, when I realized that, it made a lot of sense for me. And, how I got through the fall, because I cried every day until October, and then it was every second day. I went back to my guy, because you know what? We can't do this alone. That's the one thing. If anybody is listening to me about this, therapy is a good thing. Having a life coach is a good thing. Having a good friend that you can talk to is a good thing. And not the friend that's going to give you advice, the friend who's just going to listen, because you can't do this alone. So I know when I feel like I'm just putting in time, that's a warning signal for me. That's a warning signal that I'm not okay. So when I get up, I naturally wake up about 4:15, and I try to stay in bed till 6, because if not, my days are too long if I don't have the kids. But when I literally count the hours till it's bedtime because I need the day to be done, that's a warning signal for me. So what do? I go back and talk to my guy, and then I do that for, a few months, and then I'll take a break and I'll, let it go again. But I needed the help and the support, because I just needed, you forget the things you learn along the way. You don't know what you don't know. And sometimes you just need someone else to help you.
Yep,
and that's not a bad thing.
No, not at all. Not at all.
And like, I have a gazillion little tips to help people who are feeling not great. And I know, because, I am a certified business coach, blah, and all that. But I also know where my line is. Like, yes, I did a whole course with life coaching and stuff like that. But I also know when to say, okay, it's time for you to talk to somebody else. And here's a really good list of people. Because we have this stigma about being okay, and we're supposed to be okay. My word, I don't know. My coaching and mentoring website is gina.best, and you can see my motto on there, because it's pretty in your face. I don't want to, it's fuck fine is my motto. Fine is to me, being fine is dying a slow death. And I don't want people to be fine. I want people to be amazing or shitty. You
Right.
know, I learned long ago, I don't ask people if they're okay anymore. I check in and say, "How you doing?" You know, I don't try to fix people anymore. My line is, "How can I support you in this?" You know, Sunday we had my best friend and her son over for we had Mexican Easter and we
Hmm.
made tortillas and all that kind of stuff. And her husband was ill and she's taking care of elderly parents and, you know, parenting a 7-year-old and a husband who's amazing. But she's got a lot going on right now. And I said to her, you know, how you feeling? And she said, I'm not okay. And I said, that's okay. And I said,
Yeah.
how can I support you? She should be my accountability partner. I said, all right, tell me what we're going to do.
It's great that you brought that up because one of my previous episodes, we talked about that. When people ask, "Are you okay?" or "How are you doing?" specifically,
Mhm.
it's not necessarily the impression that I get sometimes is it's another salutation. How are you doing? They're not really interested in how are you doing, or if you say I'm not doing well, they may not know how to address it. What do you do at that point? And because if somebody opens up and quite honestly says, you know what, I'm really not all that well right now. I'm struggling. I'm having a tough day. Okay, what do we do with that? How do we respond to that? And I love the way that you put that. Um, is is how can I be of help? What can I do right now to help
Yes.
you in your life? I
How
mean,
can
that's
I
that's a
support?
how
Yeah.
can I support you? Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean that's a great way of looking at it because that's when somebody opens up like that. That's what they're looking for help too. It's their subtle way of, or maybe not so subtle, a way of saying, yeah, I need some help. I'm going to be honest with you because you got to be honest with yourself first.
Yeah, and
That's what I've always said too.
I'm really lucky that because I had the pivoting point 7 years ago, I am a completely different person than I was before. I always cared and I had the tenderest, biggest heart. I just hit it really well. But
Hmm.
I'm really lucky that when people need support in my world, they know that they can call me. And when I ask, "How are you?" I actually want to know.
Hmm.
You know, and that's the difference. And for anybody out there, if you're in a position that you don't know what to say, just listen, hold space for that person. That's all you have to do. Sometimes people just need to vent, and you know, it could be tears, it could be anger, it could be ranting. Some people just need to get it out there, you
Yeah.
know. And I like to say, you know, I my girlfriend and I, let me just phrase this. We try not to be judgmental people. You know, we all try to be good people, but every now and then you just need to bitch about something. So we call them catty bitch moments.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we pick up the phone and we call catty bitch moment and we just spew it out and it's done. And we tell someone it's safe, someone we trust. Because really, the reason it's pissing me off probably has nothing to do with anything, but I just need to vent about it. And oh
Hmm.
my God, they're the best thing in the whole wide world. And when they're called catty bitch moments, they're just forgotten when you hang up the phone.
Yep. That's
Yeah.
cool.
But it's
Now,
talk to people.
yes, and that's a theme that I've talked about so many times before, and I've used it in my own personal life because of um, you think you're alone. It feels like you're alone. And then when you kind of open up and talk to people, as I mentioned to you, before we started recording, is when I was going through my concussion, you talk to somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody, and it may be 6 or 7 people down the road, but you're engaging with people that are trying to help you. You talk to others that have gone through similar circumstances. You realize that there is help out there. You realize that you are going to get better, and there's people that are around you to support you, and that I think elevates it did for me anyways. My recovery time got a little bit shorter because I think a lot of it was just the frame of mind, knowing that there's other people out there that can help me and that have
Yeah,
gone through this and understand it, and just whether it's empathy, whether it's just listening, you know.
absolutely.
Yep.
And remember, we're all doing the best we can.
Hmm.
You know, who knew? I mean, God, in a million years, would you ever thought we would have went through a global pandemic on top of life? Like
No.
we are all doing the best we can, and just remember that. And you know, and the next time someone pisses you off or gets your feathers ruffled, just stop and think, okay, we're doing the best we can. That's probably the best they can do. And guess what? It's not worth it. That's again why I don't do social media stuff. It's not worth getting upset over something I can't control.
Yep.
So I just remove myself from the situation. You know, find
Hmm.
something. Halfway through the pandemic, my girlfriend said to me, "What brings you joy?" And I had no answer. right? So how I
Yeah.
got, I have a huge creative side, I always have. So that's what brings me joy, is making jewelry in the garage, sewing something, those things, which is, I put them away after I did all the work on myself, because that's how I coped for so many years, right? I was always busy. So now I'm mindful busy, and I'm letting my creativity out. But find something that brings you joy, because that will counteract all the yicky stuff going on in your head.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Gina, before we wrap up, can you tell me a little bit about your podcast?
My podcast. It's called Real Life with Gina and Sheila, but we're about to change the name of it.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to call it Buckle Up Bitches, because that's her favorite phrase. It's like having coffee with Sheila and I. Sheila's an amazing life coach out of Ontario, and we try to pick topics that come up for us in our coaching and mentoring business. And it's really like having coffee with us. We go off on tangents. We're opinionated. We're very different, and we're highly entertaining, I think. My friend Christina always calls me and goes, "What was going on there?" I'm like, "I don't know." But it's truly we started it for our enjoyment, that we need an outlet. And people are listening, and we talk about a lot of things people won't talk about. We're both moms of kids who have special needs, and that in itself is its own topic. But we're dealing with aging parents, and self-worth, and last week we talked about transitions, and so we talk about all sorts of things. We really enjoy it. It's like literally having coffee with us.
Can you name the podcast again, or can you tell us where you can find it?
Real Life with Gina and Sheila, and you can find it on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And in the next week or two, I'm going to change it to Buckle Up Bitches. I just haven't figured out how yet.
All right, I'll stop laughing.
You can't laugh through any of this. Like, seriously, that is the best medicine. That and move your body.
That and moving your body.
Yeah.
Gina, thank you very much. Thank you for being my guest. It's been a great conversation. Truly enjoyed it. Thank you very much for offering your time. Truly appreciate it. It's a great lessons to learn from you. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I so enjoy it.
That's perfect. Thank you. And for those that are listening, thank you very much. Please take care of yourself. And if you can, someone else too. Thank you.